In this video, we're picking right up where we left off in the last one and editing this photo here. So I'm going to hit Control B to close my browser just to give a little bit more space here. And let's come in and start editing this. So it's going to need quite a bit more brightness. If you remember, I copied it from the previous image here from the last video. So we're going to move pretty quick throughout this editing session. So I'm going to not really mention a lot of things like that in the future. I just wanted to point that out that we have a lot of stuff to cover. I'm going to try to break this up into bite-sized pieces, which is why we're cutting off the videos 7 to 10 minutes or so. I'm going to try to do that. Some might run a little bit longer, but trying to keep it at bite-sized pieces. And that's really the editing process. So I'll even do that on the back end. Even if I'm not recording, I'll break it up into bite-sized pieces just to make it a little bit more, a little bit easier to get through rather than taking on this huge project of editing hundreds and hundreds of photos. I can break it up and edit a few of them, go get some coffee, come back, edit a few more, just kind of break it up into bite-sized pieces. And then overall, you get it all done. There we go. I'm happy with that. I think that's pretty close to what we had over here too. So we're trying to get it to look similar. It looks like this here, actually that might be a bird. Give it a sec. Yeah, it looks like that's actually a bird, not something on the lens. Okay. So we can remove that. I'll probably remove that later on, but once we get into the next phase of editing. But that's just good to know that it wasn't something actually on the lens. You can see it moved over here now, so that's why I think it's a bird. But now let's see if we can copy this. So Control-Shift-C, Control-Shift-V, and we paste that. So I'm happy with that. See, it's pulling out some nice punch to it, some nice contrast. You see my shadow there that we'll deal with later on. Right now, I'm just focusing on the colors, adding some more contrast. This one here actually might need to be brought up a little bit. So we'll paste that and then bring up the exposure a little bit. Maybe bring the brightness up. Pull the highlights down, which is going to pull the sky out a little bit more as I'm doing the exposure. There we go. Oops, I hit Control-Shift-V, so undo, Control-Z or Command-Z on a Mac. I wanted to do Control-Shift-C. I wanted to copy my adjustments, and then I can paste them here since I know this one is a little bit darker too. Same with these. Actually, let me try something here on this one. See just how much of that sky I can pull back. Quite a bit. But so one issue here is you start to get a little bit of haloing around here, and I'm not a fan of that. You'll see that in a lot of shots where they're pulling the raw file a little bit too much from the exposure that was there. And I don't want the sky to be too overwhelming to her. She's the subject of the shot, right? And we want the background to be very minimal. So I want to be there, but be very minimal, just like the ground. Go. These, I might just a little bit. Adjust just a little bit. I'm going to bring the brightness up just a little bit more. Just because of the way that they were shot, I think. So I'm just pasting those. We can actually do multiples if we wanted to. So we can shift and select and then Control-Shift-V or apply those adjustments to multiple shots. I'm going to try it with this and see. That's actually not bad. I might want to pull it down just a little bit. And this again is kind of the process, right? So in some of the shots, it's going to, when we copy and paste, it's going to work great. So one thing I do while I'm on the set is I try not to adjust my settings. I don't have any auto settings because the camera's trying to then adjust for every single shot. And that makes it more difficult to edit when you get shots that have different white balance, different everything in every single shot, because the camera's calculating it for each shot. Instead, when you lock it down on the camera, it becomes easier to copy and paste those adjustments. But even then, especially when you're outside like we are here, you can't control some elements, right? You can't control the sun. The sun kept going behind the clouds, right? You can't control things like that. So you're going to get some different shots anyway that we'll need to adjust for. But I think all of these will probably work. Applying, you can see it's applying those adjustments, so we can just verify. Yeah, I think those are good. Okay. Now let's try a closer up one. So again, should work. Yeah, it looks pretty good there, pulling that out. I'm happy with that. Maybe a little bit more. And then we'll take all of these shots, these closer up shots, Control-Shift-V to apply that adjustment that we copied from this one right here. Perfect. This one I'm going to copy from one of these, which she's a little bit further away. I like that. So select those, paste. Just a fast way of making these edits here, which I love about Capture One. So for this, let's try it and see how this looks. I'm actually going to pull from one of these earlier ones with all of her. So all of her in the shot. So let's try that. Even that's a little bit too oversaturated for me on this one. So one thing with saturation, when it comes to raw shots, a lot of times it depends on your camera. I've noticed I shoot with a Sony, and for a lot of those raw shots, I have to crank the saturation pretty high. You can see on some of these, you know, I've got it up. I mean, you could crank it even higher, which is just unrealistic. But you do have to crank the saturation a little bit on some of those raw shots because it doesn't have a lot of, especially if you're shooting video in log or something. But even on photos, I haven't noticed having to do that as much with Canons, although it's been a long time, many years since I've shot with Canon. I've never really shot much with Nikon. I've used them, but not like consistently. So a lot of it has to do with the sensor and how it's picking up different colors. So depending on what you're using is going to determine your settings, right? And it's not going to be an all-in-one option here. So let's paste these. This video is starting to run a little bit long. Let's see if we can get the rest of these edited here. Because I think from here on out, we should have some of the base ones that we can just copy and paste. Yeah, okay, so this is going to be another, so as we're doing sunset shots, I'm probably going to have to create a new one and not, a new edit and not copy and paste. Let's try a copy and paste. Yeah, that's still too dark. Okay, so let's reset this and then we'll cut this video off here. And then in our next video, we're going to tackle editing the sunset shots and getting the final color correction done here inside of Capture One. See you there.